look at is the Virya. So the Virya is also known as the thermal nature of something. It's really how it affects the metabolic body. Does it increase our metabolism? Does it increase the body's exchange of enzymes and processing of internal space? Or does it decrease our metabolism? Does it slow down the rate of enzymatic function, changing of one molecule into another molecule? That's largely what the Virya of something is. Sometimes it's called as the specific potency, because it's really important. But in Ayurveda, above all other traditional medicine systems, there's a real focus on Agni, metabolism, how we are metabolizing life. And the Ayurvedic system is largely focused on the digestive tract. I know all traditional medicines are to a certain degree, but Ayurveda is metabolism, digestive tract focus. The whole 6 stages of disease build from the digestive tract, whereas the 6 stages of disease in Chinese medicine build from subtle energies out here that move inwards. Both of them beautiful, just different lenses to look at the situation. So because Ayurveda is so metabolism, digestive focused, they really want to know, how does a substance influence the metabolism? Does it speed it up or does it slow it down? And so they give substance a heating or a cooling nature. And through that heating or cooling nature, we're then able to understand, will it increase digestive juices? Will it open up the pores in the body and expand all of the cells to be further apart? Will it create a lightness inside the body? Because heat tends to lighten. Once we speed up metabolism, we tend to lighten tissues. Like if we needed to stimulate weight loss, we need to stimulate metabolism. Then on the other side of that, the cold slows down enzymatic functions, contracts tissues and pulls them closer together. It also, because it slows down our metabolic functions, it can be better for being able to build up some weight as well. So if we've got a fast, heated food, let's say black pepper, ginger, pipali, this is a classic pungent formula, trikatu, 3 pungents used in Ayurveda, they're all heating, they'll all speed up the metabolic process. And although that could be good for Vata, if we don't have it with a bunch of other cooling, slowing down, heavy-natured foods, then that would make them lose weight too easily. So this heating cold nature is really important in Ayurveda. It emphasizes how it affects the metabolism. And they'll always be looking at that in relation to the tastes. And although we can have a generalization, as an example, sweet is generally cooling, it's not always. We will absolutely have some sweet foods that will be slightly on the warming side as well. Sour is generally warming, and yet amalaki and lemons and limes tend to cool the body. Salty is generally heating. Most of our salts are on the heating side. There's only certain salts that I would say are less heating, but I would still say almost all of them are heating. Pungency is generally heating. And there's a few, like some fennel seeds, some coriander seeds, that may also cool a bit at the same time. The bitter taste tends to be the coldest, slows the metabolism down, draws things out of the body quickly. And because of that, it's like pulling out the base of a fire. If you use a lot of bitter, as an example, coffee first thing in the morning before eating a meal, then that will tend to pull the base of the fire out. And it doesn't have the heat to be able to move up. Now, coffee's a strange one because it's bitter and warming, which is not the generalization. Remember, we've got generalizations of the taste. Generally, bitter is cooling, yet people can get away with coffee for a much longer period of time because although it's bitter and it pulls things down and out, it's slightly warming, so it's stimulating a bit of the fire at the same time. And our last taste, astringent, tends to be cooling. It slows down the metabolism. It helps us build the tissues in the body. It's another reason why it's really important for some Vatas to find astringent foods that they can eat, because those ones will also help build the tissues. They'll slow down the metabolism in a way that's still functional for the rest of the body. And they just need to make sure that they're using it amongst other things that are very lubricating. Again, like the Apana Prana formula I mentioned before, it has like licorice that's sweet. It's cooling, it's lubricating to the body, it's got slippery elms, sweet, cooling, lubricating, balancing out a formula to make sure the astringency is not drying too much.
Okay, is it why like a lot of some of the medicines in Ayurveda were prescribed with honey? I'm not sure, because honey was going to add that effect to some of these medicines.
There's a few different reasons why things are prescribed with honey. I would say the first reason is that honey is a medicine by itself, that using good quality honey is a fabulous, amazing medicine, and cultures all over the world use it. If it's raw and it's fresh, it's got so many enzymes in it that it's going to have that effect. The second reason that they use honey is that out of the sweet tastes, it's one that in Ayurveda, they often say that slightly warm rather than sweet would generally be cool. And it's warming and lekhania, which means to scrape, to grab things and draw them through, means that it tends to not block channels in the same way that some other sweet tastes do. And then the third reason, and I would say probably the most important from an Ayurvedic perspective, is that when we mix a medicine with any sugar or sweetness, we then stimulate the penetration of the medicine into the cells. And this is something that's not very well understood by a lot of modern practitioners learning Ayurveda. So I'm going to spend just a moment on explaining the modern physiology and why it works so well, especially because modern doctors or those that'll learn Ayurveda and be like, what? There's so much sugar. Why are we using so much sugar? And I would agree that we need to limit sugar in our daily lives and not have excess sugar. Yet using sugar with a medicine is a very different thing. And that's what I'm going to explain right now. That when we have a bit of sweetness inside the body, when that enters into the bloodstream, it stimulates the release of insulin. And insulin, we know of in relation to diabetes, and people can get insulin resistance and all sorts of challenges around insulin. But what a lot of people don't know is that just as insulin plugs into a cell and says, now the cell can take in more sugar, and that's what moves the sugar from the blood into all the cells of the body, that insulin also helps the cells take in many other things. So when it plugs in, it's basically saying cells receive. Now it turns the cells on into their receive mode. And then that allows the medicine to also be floating through the blood and move into the cells in a more quick and absorbed way. So this third reason I'm talking about with honey is in relation to the sugar content, fructose, a very easy sugar for our body to break down. It's about 80% fructose in honey. And then that allows us to get a little bit of a blood sugar level spike with the honey, secrete the insulin, increase the amount of nutrition that goes into the cells, increase the growth factors of the body, the nourishment factor. And then because fructose is so easily broken down, it allows the body to quickly break fructose and bring the blood sugar levels back down to a normal state again. So that would be the three main reasons. The fourth one will be that honey has a satmya, a suited affinity. We'll cover that in the Dravya Guna as the last step there. Honey has a satmya towards the lungs, the respiratory system, through the sinus. So if they are trying to focus the medicine towards these areas, then they can use the honey as a vehicle where it's going to take the medicines there.
Wow. That is just so amazing. Like I never thought about that because of the sugar factor in honey, it actually helps even absorb the other medicines in that you take with it. It's not about loading yourself up with a lot of sugar, with like candies and sweets, but sugar is a necessity. Like it's the sweet taste is the biggest taste that governs your body. Like when Ayurveda said to take some medicines with either honey or with ghee, then there was a reason that there were certain properties in it which were helping absorption. Like it's not about deep frying food in ghee, but it's all about the combination. Like because I heard that ghee has vitamin K, and it also helps in your absorption of vitamin D and calcium and all from milk. So I usually put a tablespoon of ghee in my night warm milk. But like some of these combinations had a meaning. It was not that it was uh, like it's not that they just gave it out of nowhere. So honey definitely, why they say honey enhances the property of a medicine, it's somewhat makes sense in a way. Conceptually it makes sense now to me. So even the diabetic people, if they are taking a medicine with honey, but if they're not loading themselves up with a lot of sugar or a lot of fat, then I'm sure like a medicine is not going to hurt them in a medicinal quantity.
I think it's with people with diabetes, well, it still will be beneficial, yet the dose and the amount might be very minimal, and they'd have to be measuring their blood sugar levels to be able to perceive when that is. So I absolutely still use some medicines with sugars in them with people with diabetes, but the dose might be 1/10 or less of that. And I will absolutely be trying to limit empty sugar. If you're taking sugar and there's not other nutrition and medicine with it, you're going to get these blood sugar level spikes, and it's not going to be really beneficial in the same way that we've talked about here. So we're purely talking about medicine uses, and absolutely
But
still
honey is not going to cause you diabetes.
small amounts.
But honey is not going to cause you diabetes. Like it's going to be other unhealthy eating habits or excessive or your genetics.
Yeah, I would say genetics and karma could enable someone to also get diabetes from honey, just dose dependent. How much are they using? How are they using it? Did they cook the honey with other carbohydrates first? That will also, if it's cooked with carbohydrates or proteins, that will create a lot of insulin resistance. So you'll probably understand from this interview that this is a huge topic for me, and I could go on for hours on just the relationship of how honey could
This
diabetes.
interview is not for people to get medical advice.
Yeah.
And people should not be following any advice from this video. It's a more general information because Ayurveda already is pretty straightforward that every person is unique, and why they acquired a certain disease or what their lifestyle was or what their prakriti is, what their nature is inside inbuilt, their genes, everything will determine a lot in sense of what their treatment plan should be and what their diet should be. So nobody should take any information out of this to start applying on their own life, because Ayurveda needs a one-on-one consultation with a practitioner like Kimmana. So they should be definitely reaching out to you.
I agree, Corey. I think that for the specifics, it'll be best to have one-on-one. And as a generalization, you're absolutely right. It will be difficult to cause diabetes by using honey with some medicine, especially if that medicine is specific for that person's kapha imbalances.
Mm-hmm.
Should we continue with our next Dravya Guna?
Yes, perfect. You can go ahead.
So we are now proceeding from the taste and the thermal action. These are the priority. And if you're new to Ayurveda, just stick with this. This is really the entry level that you can get so much out of, and just stay with these and start to get used to tasting food and being like, what does that taste mean? You'll be able to see there's a 6 medicinal tastes chart that I've created. Maybe I could give the resource to Gauri. She could link it up in the show notes as well. You could also find it on Kimmana.com as well. Then we move on from the taste and the thermal action, and we now come into the